The wind howled across the plains that morning, stirring the dust into small spirals that danced over the hard-packed earth. The sun was only just beginning to climb, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, but Samuel Drake was already on his horse, his silhouette sharp against the rising light. He was the kind of man people talked about in hushed tones, richer than anyone for 100 miles, owner of half the grazing land in the county, and colder than the iron nails that held his barns together. Today he rode to settle a debt, a long overdue loan made to a struggling farmer months before the man's sudden death. To him, it was just business, nothing personal. That was until he reached the small, weathered cabin at the edge of Dry Creek Valley. The cabin looked near collapse, its wood gray from years of sun and storm. Smoke barely rose from the chimney, and the fences were broken. But what caught Samuel's attention first wasn't the ruin, it was the woman standing on the porch, holding a baby in her arms and watching him approach, with a quiet strength that made him pull the reins tighter. She was young, perhaps no older than 26, with her hair braided loosely over one shoulder, and the look of someone who hadn't slept in days. Behind her, 5 small children stood close together, their faces smeared with dust and curiosity. The youngest clung to her skirt. The oldest, maybe 10, stood protectively in front. Samuel dismounted slowly, his boots crunching on the dirt. "Mrs. Carter," he said evenly, tipping his hat, "I'm here on behalf of your husband's debt." She didn't flinch. Her eyes, gray like a storm about to break, met his. "I know who you are, Mr. Drake," she said softly, "and I know what you came for. But I have nothing left to give." He frowned, his jaw tightening. "The records say he borrowed $200. It was due last month." Her voice trembled, not from fear but exhaustion. "My husband Daniel died trying to pay you back. He went after a herd in the storm to make one last sale, and never came home. You already took the cattle. There's nothing left but this house and these children." The silence that followed was heavy, pressing against Samuel's chest in a way he didn't expect. He'd collected debts before. He'd seen tears, heard pleading, but this woman didn't beg. She simply stood there, a baby in her arms, facing the world alone. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind against the prairie grass. He looked at the children again, thin, barefoot, but standing straight, the kind of strength that comes from necessity, not choice. Something twisted inside him, a flicker of memory he thought long buried. His own mother long ago, standing in front of a landlord who had come to take their home after his father's death. She had looked much the same, tired, proud, unyielding. Samuel had sworn he'd never be poor again, never be at someone else's mercy. That vow had made him rich, but somewhere along the way, it had cost him something he couldn't name. "I see," he said finally. "Then I'll inspect the property." Her shoulders straightened slightly. "You'll find nothing of value here but us." He walked the perimeter of the small farm. The barn leaned sideways, the fields were dry, the well half collapsed. It was clear she'd been fighting a losing battle since her husband's death. Yet there were signs of fierce determination, rows of seedlings trying to grow, a mended fence, a wash line of tiny clothes. She hadn't given up. He returned to the porch and found her kneeling beside one of the children, tying a broken shoe with a strip of cloth. The baby stirred, and she rocked gently, humming a low, tender tune. "You're alone here?" he asked quietly. "My husband's brother promised to help," she said, not looking up. "He never came. Folks don't visit much this far out. Guess no one wants to be reminded of what hard living looks like." Samuel studied her for a long moment. The woman had no gold, no cattle, no land worth claiming, but she had courage, and something that looked an awful lot like grace. He felt an unfamiliar tug in his chest. Business told him to take the land, sell it, and move on. But something deeper, something human, whispered no. "I could take this land," he said finally. "It's within my rights." She rose slowly, holding her child close. "Then do it. But know this, everything here was built by Daniel's hands and held together by mine. You can take the dirt, Mr. Drake, but you'll never take the love that grew from it." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He turned toward his horse, angry at himself for hesitating. You've got a strong will, Mrs. Carter. She gave a faint, tired smile. When you've got 5 mouths to feed and no one else to help, you learn to be strong. That night, Samuel didn't sleep. He camped not far from her property, staring at the stars while the fire cracked low. He thought about the years he'd spent counting money, building fences and driving men harder than his own heart could bear. He thought about her, about how she faced the world with nothing but bare hands and love. When dawn came, he had made his decision. He returned to the cabin as the sun climbed over the horizon. She was outside again, hanging clothes on a line, her children laughing softly as they chased each other through the dust. "Mrs. Carter," he said firmly, dismounting once more, "I've looked over the debt. I'm clearing it." She froze, blinking in disbelief. "Clearing it? Why?" "Because some debts can't be paid in coin," he said quietly. "And because your husband gave his life trying to do right by me. That's payment enough." Her eyes shimmered, and for the first time, her strength faltered. "I don't know how to thank you."